Welcome in everybody to the 6th video in my 2024 Rookie Prospect Profile series. Today we're taking a look at my Rookie 106 in 1 quarterback leagues and 110 in Superflex leagues, Oregon wide receiver Troy Franklin, another solid wide receiver prospect in this fantastic rookie wide receiver class this year. Taking a look at Franklin's college career, Franklin joined Oregon in 2021 and was behind a couple of seniors and another sophomore, so he wasn't really on the field all that much with only 200 yards and 2 touchdowns on 18 receptions. In 2022 though, with those seniors gone and Bo Nix now at the helm, Franklin ascended to the wide receiver 1 on the team, leading all pass catchers across the board with almost 900 yards and 9 touchdowns on 61 receptions in his first breakout season as a sophomore. Franklin then followed that up with a monster junior season, hauling in almost 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns on 81 receptions, which is the 4th best season among all wide receivers in this class, ahead of Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., and just a 1/10 of a decimal point of points per game behind Marvin Harrison Jr. But let's go into the analytics, and if you've watched these videos before, you may be familiar with my marker system, which is simply a series of checkboxes or baselines that I want players to hit based on what previously successful NFL players had coming out of college. And at the wide receiver position, I have 16 markers that are checking for various production and athleticism metrics with a final adjustment at the end based on draft capital. And currently, Troy Franklin is grading out with 8 markers hit, which is tied for 6th in this class. And then when he's most likely a 1st round or 2nd round pick in the NFL draft, he'll then raise up to 9 total markers hit, which is extremely respectable, especially as the wide receiver 5 in an overall class. That is where Rashee Rice was last year, Michael Pittman a few years ago, Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk, Randall Cobb over a decade ago. It is a very good place to be in, even if it's not considered to be in that upper tier of prospects in any given draft class. A lot of the markers that he misses on are all related in some way, with the production metrics of best yards per team pass attempt, best market share of yards, and no 30% breakout age, all primarily coming from his 2023 season just barely missing the mark on these baselines, which I want to blame on the fact that he missed a game and a half from a shoulder injury in the Pac-12 game, which caused him to also sit out their bowl game. Had he played in those games, I think he clears at least the 30% breakout age, as he only needed about 80 yards and a touchdown total over 6 quarters to do that, and he also could have cleared the 3 yards per team pass attempt with 160 yards over those same 6 quarters. He probably wouldn't have hit the yardage market share. He needed like 300 yards to do that. That seems like a little much even in the college era, even in Oregon's offense, but hitting on the other 2 would have been enough to prop him up actually over Brian Thomas Jr. and Rome Odunze in this marker system. To speak to the BMI at least, that is a major red flag on his profile. It's one of the reasons why I'm basically pretty much out on Xavier Worthy as well this year, plus a couple of other things for Worthy's profile. But all of these things are something that I discussed in a previous video that I'll link up here, talking through having various red flags on your profile and what that means as a prospect. Since 2003, there have been 11 players drafted in the NFL with a BMI below a 24, and the only one with sustained production has been Devonta Smith, who, let me remind you, did win the Heisman Trophy in his final season. So he was insane in college, and coming into the NFL, that BMI did not matter. Mario Manningham is the only other receiver on this list with even a top 24 season of fantasy production. That is the bucket that Troy Franklin has been placed in based on his size. Now, I will say that that is the only red flag on Troy Franklin's profile. He does not have multiple red flags like Xavier Worthy does, or Keon Coleman, or Ladd McConkey, and the hit rate of top 24 production among players with just 1 red flag is 13%, which is a fair jump up from 4% with multiple red flags. And when you filter down to players just drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, that hit rate goes up to 33% with 1 red flag versus still 4% with multiple red flags. With all of that being said though, I am less concerned about Franklin's BMI because of what he put on tape at Oregon over 3 seasons, and also the trajectory of the NFL allowing for these smaller bodied receivers to be more successful than ever before. I mean, just in the last 3 years, I already mentioned Devonta Smith's massive success in the NFL, but Jaylen Waddle is only a couple pounds heavier than Troy Franklin. We have seen Tank Dell succeed at 165 pounds. Zay Flowers is 182 pounds. Jordan Addison, 173. Josh Downs, 171. Jahan Dotson and Elijah Moore have had stretches and flashes under 180 pounds as well. And just a little bit further back, you get Hollywood Brown and Darnell Mooney, who have each posted a 1,000-yard season so far. It is a very different world for for receivers in today's NFL. And when we can insert a player with Troy Franklin's skill set who can be both a deep ball receiver and a possession receiver at the same time, then that is going to fit a vast majority of NFL teams currently in today's NFL. He is a very solid route runner with excellent release and suddenness to beat press coverage off the line of scrimmage. Plus, just his general speed is enough to create separation against regular man coverage to the point where defenses have to account for him with extra safety help. He has shown the ability to win at all three levels on the field, and whether he's on the outside or in the slot, and he has an impressive ability to go up and high point the ball while maintaining control of his body along the sideline. And then when he has the ball in his hands, he's extremely dangerous after the catch with that 4.4 speed to just run away from defenders and be a home run threat on any given play. Now, even though he is 6'2", being at 176 pounds does lend to a deficiency in contested catchability and also breaking tackles. He is definitely not the most physical receiver on the field, and he can get bullied off of his routes or at the catch point by bigger and more physical defensive backs. Another issue that he has that kind of displayed in 2023 was concentration drops, which we see a whopping 10% drop rate in this past season, which was 5th highest among receivers with at least 100 targets last year. You'll notice that on tape, he is often trying to start turning his body to run before he's made the catch, which sometimes you get away with, but also sometimes you don't. But overall, I definitely think that Troy Franklin has a skill set to be a strong wide receiver 2 in the NFL or a 1B in the right situation. I think his ceiling is Jaylen Waddle, who showed that he can be productive as the wide receiver 1 on a team and also be productive as the wide receiver 2 on the team with still an alpha wide receiver. Jordan Addison, I think, is another good comp both stylistically and physically as a successful wide receiver 2 on an offense. Tank Dell as well, who is smaller, but his overall role on the Texans is similar to what I would like to see from Troy Franklin when he gets to the NFL. So with that in mind, I would love to see Troy Franklin drafted at the end of the first round. I think the Dallas Cowboys make a ton of sense where he can be the Jaylen Waddle to CeeDee Lamb's Tyreek Hill with Dak Prescott at the helm. And if Brandon Cooks can give him some guidance, help him develop a little bit and contribute to those nuances of the game, I think that is a win-win for everybody. Arizona, I think, would be interesting too in multiple ways. Either number one, they double dip at wide receiver by taking Marvin Harrison at 4 and then Troy Franklin at either 27 or 35 overall as their wide receiver 2. That could be very, very interesting. Or number 2, Arizona trades back with Minnesota, and maybe Franklin is actually the first wide receiver they take at 23 or 27 overall, or he's paired with someone less like alpha E at the wide receiver position, like a Brian Thomas Jr. or an Adonai Mitchell, to where it's now a question as who's actually the wide receiver 1 for Kyler Murray. I like both situations still for Troy Franklin. Buffalo at 28 obviously makes a ton of sense as well as the wide receiver 1B with an aging Stephon Diggs. And that is another situation that could be a Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle tandem with an actual elite quarterback in a situation that could evolve into Troy Franklin actually becoming the wide receiver 1, even if it's just for a season or two, as they transition away from Stephon Diggs. And then if he falls to the early second, I honestly would not mind the New England Patriots if they draft a quarterback at 3 overall, whether that's Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Essentially, they would pair their rookie quarterback with a rookie wide receiver that he can grow with, and Franklin would immediately become the wide receiver 1 on the Patriots. It might sound gross, I get it, but I would be all over Franklin there in New England, especially if he loses value because of that landing spot. So I really like the value of Troy Franklin that I've been seeing in rookie drafts so far, especially when he's being mocked at like the 111 in Superflex leagues with a range of more mid-first round to almost even all the way to the late second round. He's absolutely my pick at the receiver position if you are deciding between him or one of the Texas wide receivers or Keon Coleman or Ladd McConkey. The answer to me is Troy Franklin of that whole entire group. In fact, I can see a world where Franklin bumps Brian Thomas Jr. as my wide receiver 4 in this class based on their landing spots, and Franklin now becomes my 105 in one quarterback leagues or 1.09 in Superflex. That is not out of the range of possibilities for me after the NFL draft. So Franklin is absolutely my target with any picks between that late first, early second in Superflex, especially over all of those receivers in that same range.